Have you ever noticed how much of life, your life, moves forward doing things you don't want to do? Like, it's just, you don't want to. Like, for example, the classic example, you don't want to get up early, but the alarm clock goes off and it's like, you got to get up, you got to go. You just have to, you don't have a choice. You don't want to go to the gym and exercise, but the doctor keeps saying things like cardio and motion, activity, and you don't want to live on a budget, but the credit card statement keeps asking questions about how we're going to pay for this and what's next. And you definitely don't want to sleep on, you definitely don't want to apologize. You certainly don't want to sleep on the couch, right? So we do things not always because we want to, but because we're willing to. We're willing to get up early. We're willing to have the hard conversation. We're willing to do the uncomfortable. We're willing to push past maybe what we've done before, not necessarily because we want to, but we're willing to because we believe there's a better ending. There's a payoff. There's something else eventually that will happen. Now, what's weird to me is, and maybe you've thought about this, for some reason, we operate this way in our life all over the place. Like with our family, with our finance, with our health. I mean, we get the whole wanting and willing thing. We really understand that in almost every area of life. But when it comes to spiritual things, for some reason, we kind of disconnect that and think, well, I just got to wait till I really want to. Like one of these days, I'm going to wake up feeling super spiritual and full of faith, and I'm going to live this incredible, spiritual, God-oriented life, and everything will be great. Whenever that happens, when I wake up wanting to do that, then I'll see some really cool stuff happen in my life. And what we don't get is the wanting to versus willing is just as important. Because in the Bible, one of the things you find as you read about the stories of people's lives and how they encounter faith, one of the things that comes up over and over and over, it wasn't that they always had this great wanting to, but they did have a willingness. They had a willingness to obey even when what they were told to obey didn't always make sense. They had a willingness to trust even when they could not see around the corner and they didn't know how it was going to end. They had a willingness to still hope when their life turned very desperate and sometimes even devastated. And we find this that happens over and over and over. And as we start this new series, Encountering God, this is just perfect way to begin, because what you find is if you are willing to encounter God, pretty soon you will find yourself counting on God. Like it builds your faith, and it's the willingness that matters. It's not the wanting to. And so for some of you that are feelers, I'm not telling you your feelings don't matter. They absolutely do. But I'm saying there's more to it than just feelings. And for some of you that are thinkers, that you don't really rely on your feelings a whole lot, yes, you make the decision to be willing, but your whole heart comes with you. This isn't an either or, it's a both and. Wanting to, emotionally engaged, willing to, making the decision to move forward. And we see this probably no more clearly than we do in 1 Kings chapter 17. If you've got a Bible and you want to follow along, we're going to be there. You can follow in the app. In 1 Kings 17, we run into a man named Elijah, and we're going to be talking about Elijah and Elisha over these next probably 2 months, all through June and July, and how they encountered God and led other people to encounter God. And what we find showing up over and over and over is that faith starts with willingness. You see, my willingness is more important than my wanting to. That's the takeaway from all of this today is your willingness when it comes to faith, when it comes to spiritual things, when it comes to knowing or encountering God, your willingness is more important than your wanting to. In 1 Kings 17, we step into kind of a unique situation, if you will. You may not have a lot of Bible history, but if you'll go back about 3,000 years to 930 BC, I know that was a long time ago, the nation of Israel was one until they had this civil war that happened in 930 BC. And it split apart. It split into a northern kingdom that was about 10 tribes, most of the population and most of the land, and 2 tribes in the south. Less population, less land. The northern kingdom was called Israel. It kept the name because they were the bigger of the two. The southern kingdom was known as the kingdom of Judah. And why do I tell you all of that? Because what's was a definitive point here beyond all the upset of economic and social life and national identity and all of that. The leaders of that northern kingdom told the people, we don't worship God anymore. As a nation, as a country, we don't believe that anymore. We worship a God named Baal now. Baal is the one that will save us. Baal is the one that leads us. Baal is our future. We don't need the God of the past. We don't need those old ideas. We don't need those old beliefs and practices anymore. They walked out on God. And even though that northern tribe, those northern tribes, that northern kingdom of Israel had given up on God, God had not given up on them. He sends them prophets. And one of the prophets that he sends is named Elijah, or if you heard it in their native tongue, it would have been more like Eliah. He came, and his name means Yahweh is God, and he comes as a prophet to this northern territory, this northern country. It's about 60 years since the split. And he speaks to the current king, whose name is Ahab, and he says, Ahab, because you've walked away from God, because you know better, and because you have not tried to lead the people back to God, even though you didn't make the original decision, you still haven't tried to lead people back towards God. God is sending a drought, which to us kind of sounds like, okay, I live in Phoenix. It rains like 3 times a year. What's the big deal? Well, if you live in an agricultural-based community, and you rely on the rain to water your crops and water your livestock, all of a sudden, the most important key component of life is gone. And he says it's not just a short drought. It's going to be several years. So this is desperation time. This is the economy is going to collapse. People are going to die. There's going to be wars over this because water is so, so precious. And if this really happens, it changes everything. And Elijah not only went and told Ahab that message. God told him next Elijah, I want you to leave and I want you to go wait this out. So he sends Elijah to this brook to wait, to live there instead of in the cities, instead of around the people. He sends him away. And that's where we pick it up. If you have your Bible, 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 7, you'll see why all of those details start to come into focus here. So Elijah, if you can imagine it in your mind's eye, is living next to a brook. He's just kind of waiting. He doesn't have any agenda. He's just waiting on God. In verse 7, it says this, sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. So now Elijah is out of water too. And the word of the Lord came to him again, go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath, and when he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, would you bring me a little water in a jar so that I may drink? And as she was going to get it, he called, and bring me, please, a piece of bread. As surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. She's in a bad spot. This is pretty desperate. Elijah does what God tells him to. He goes to Sidon and Zarephath, and he goes to one that it wouldn't make any sense to ask her for help, but that's the one that God told him to ask. And he asks her for help. Someone who needed help, he turns around and asks her for help. And to me, her answer is so incredibly revealing. Did you see what she said? As surely as your God, Yahweh, lives. As surely as your God lives. And why is that important? Because she had been told to count on Baal. But Baal had not been working out for her. You don't know this. That's okay. Baal was the Middle Eastern god of rain. She'd been living in a drought. Baal was the Mid-Eastern god responsible for fruitful crops. She didn't have anything to eat. Baal was the Middle Eastern god of life. She's about to die. She gave up on Baal a long time ago. But there's something in her. There's something in her that says, but there is still a God. There is still hope. There is still something else out there. And she was willing to consider it. And for some of you, that's exactly where you are. I don't know what you were counting on. And somebody told you you could count on it. Maybe your family, maybe the leaders in your world, maybe the people that had authority told you, this is the way. If you will go to college and get a job and you will make plenty of money, or if you will always prioritize family, then family will always be there for you. Or if you will just kind of do the right things, then good stuff will happen to you. And you kind of counted on that, and it didn't really work out. The family that was supposed to be there isn't. The college degree and the job and the career and the money and being able to pay all your bills and do all your things hasn't. But there's something. There's something still in you. This is, maybe I've given up on that because it didn't work, but there's got to be something else. I haven't given up completely on God. I mean, honestly, it's the reason you're here or you're watching online or you're in the room is because you haven't given up all the way. Even if it hasn't worked so far. There's something drawing you in. There's something that is still compelling about this idea of God. And that is where faith starts. Faith starts with awareness and a willingness to believe. And if that's where you are, I have such good news for you. There is such a simple next step you can take. Jesus, I believe you're there. Will you show me the next step? It's a simple prayer. It's a simple heart posture and attitude that says, Jesus, I believe. I'm willing to believe. Will you show me what's next? And trust that he will. That's where this woman was. I have counted on things that have let me down. I have put my hope in the things that all the leaders and all the people and all the government and the authorities told me that I should count on, and they came to nothing. But I'm still willing. I still have something in me that believes there is a God and he is real. And there is some reason for hope. She moves from this awareness, this initial willingness to desperation, though. She doesn't have anything. Not only does she not have anything for her, she doesn't have anything for her son, she certainly doesn't have anything for an outsider, stranger, somebody that just shows up. Look what happens next, verse 13. Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have, and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. And she went away, and she did as Elijah had told her. And there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and for her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. Now, I don't know about you. I've never been a prophet. I have never asked a widow for her last meal. That had to be hard, right? Like, she just explained it. She didn't have any reason to lie. He knows there's a drought going on. And that had to be hard to say, I want you to go home and make some for me first. I mean, is he that arrogant? Is he that selfish? Is he that unaware? Or is God doing something? Is God using this moment in this woman's life to find out if she is willing to believe a promise, even when she's desperate? Even when she doesn't have any reason to believe there is a way out, even when she doesn't have any reason to believe there's a future, is she willing, not wanting to even, is she willing to believe in a desperate moment that God can keep his promise? That God will do what he says. That if she puts him first, he will deliver and he will save. You see, you don't really know until you're desperate, right? I mean, it's easy when you got plenty. It's easy when everything's going well. You can carve out a little extra time. You can give up a few extra bucks. You can spend a few extra moments helping somebody else out because life is good and free and easy right now. But it's hard when you're desperate. It's really hard when you're desperate. And that's another level of faith. See, faith includes being desperate, but willing to claim a promise in the middle of your desperation. And for some of you, that's exactly where you are. And you're like, but it doesn't seem to be working out. You know that God has promised to be a strength and a help to you, and you can't kick your habit. The habit, the hang up, the addiction, whatever it is, you can't seem to get past it. It just seems like it's always there. It seems like you can't make any progress. He promises, but so far it hasn't happened. For some of you, it's the financial world. I mean, you feel literally like you are on the edge all the time. God promises to provide for you. God promises to take care of you, but you feel like all it would take is just a little, and the bills would overwhelm you. Sometimes even more personal, your own family. You know that God promises. He promises to protect. He promises to guide. He promises to watch over us, and our kids are just not getting it. Just a struggle all of the time, but yet we have these promises. And so what does faith look like when you're desperate? Are you willing to hold on to the promise in your desperation? And just like that awareness of God and that initial willingness, there is a simple prayer. God, I do not like what's happening, but I am willing to believe that you keep your promise. That you will somehow do what does not make sense, what does not look right on paper. It doesn't add up. 2 + 2 is not equal to 10, but you say that it is, and you say that you will, and I don't see how we're getting from A to B, but I'm willing to believe. You see, that's what faith looks like in a desperate moment. And for this woman, man, she saw the miracle. She held on to that promise, and somehow, some way, it makes no sense. The jars never ran out. And for those of you that are in this room that you have held on to a promise, and when you were desperate and you have seen God come through, you know the sense of miracle that it brings. I don't know how he did that. I don't know how he got me through that. I don't know how he provided for that. I don't know how we got her back. I don't know how any of those things happened, but he did it. That's what faith looks like in moments of desperation. And I wish I could say for this woman and for you that that's as bad as it gets. But she moves from being aware to being desperate to being devastated. Look at verse 17. Sometime later, the son of the woman who owned the house became ill. He grew worse and worse and finally stopped breathing. And she said to Elijah, "What do you have against me, man of God? Did you come to remind me of my sin and kill my son?" "Give me your son," Elijah replied. He took him from her arms and carried him to the upper room where he was staying and laid him on his bed. We're going to come back, but don't miss what happened right there. Did you hear what she said? Again, she says so much in so few words. She said, as death comes into her house, she says, "Is this what it cost? Is this what it cost for me to be right with God, to make up for my history, to make up for my sins? Is it the death of my son? Is that the cost to be put right with God again?" She was half right. It did cost the death of a son, but not her son. It was the death of God's son that would set her right. And she does what we all do in moments. I'm not talking about moments of desperation. I'm talking about moments of devastation. God, why? What is going on? This cannot be. And yet, did you see that she was still willing? She brought him to Elijah, the one who represented God, the one who had told her the promises of God, the one whom God's provision had come through, the one who originally even sparked her interest in God in the first place and showing that God was better than Baal. She comes to him devastated, but hoping. And that's what faith looks like in devastation. Devastated, but willing to hope. She had no answers. The answers she came up with were the wrong ones. She was asking questions that weren't going to get answered by anyone. She was devastated. But she still had a willingness. Didn't say she wanted to. She had a willingness to hope that maybe God can actually do something in the middle of what has devastated me. Look at verse 20. It's talking about Elijah. He cried out to the Lord, Lord my God, you have brought tragedy even on this widow that I'm staying with by causing her son to die. And he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times, and he cried out to the Lord, Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him. And the Lord heard Elijah's cry, and the boy's life returned to him, and he lived. Elijah picked up the child and carried him down from the room into the house, and he gave him to his mother and said, look, your son is alive. And then the woman said, again, every time she speaks, there's so much to what she says. Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord from your mouth is the truth. You see, God was getting his people ready to believe that he raises the dead. You see, this was not symbolism, this was real, and it was in the moment, but it had so much more meaning. 3 times he lays on him up in a room, like 3 days down in the tomb. God shows that resurrection is possible, that death is not the final answer. The most devastating thing that we can imagine, God overcomes. And did you hear what she said? Now, I know. That is the progression of faith. Mature faith. Mature faith is willing to stake everything on the resurrection. I've seen God show up. I've had questions about who God is. I believe that he's still out there. I've understood that God keeps his promises. Maybe even I've experienced miracles, but it is the resurrection. It is the resurrection that gives me certainty. That's how I know. 3,000 years ago, it was a widow in a place we've never been and never heard of. Today, it is no different. Your faith operates the same way. And it comes to maturity, not because you're aware that God exists, not even when you believe in a promise of God, not even when you cry out to God in desperation. Your faith gets rooted and anchored when it's based on the resurrection of Jesus. Jesus actually spoke about this story. And if we had a little more time, we'd go and look at it. It's in Luke chapter 4. He was preaching and speaking to a group in his own hometown, and he told him that he was the Messiah, that he had come to give sight to the blind, to free the captives, to set the prisoners free, to heal the broken, and that's who he was, and they didn't believe him. They couldn't believe him. They're like, we saw you grow up. That's not you. That's not what you're all about. We saw you as a kid. We know. And he said, do you remember the story of the widow that Elijah went to? And there's a lot going on in all of this, but he brings out the point. Do you know why he went there? He went there to help develop this person's faith. That her faith would move from a place of willingness to certainty. And that's how we live. If you are a follower of Jesus, that's exactly how we live. We walk by faith, not by sight. We don't have this moment of faith. We don't have this individual spots where we believe. It's a lifestyle. It's what gives us confidence in the things we haven't seen and hope for the things that are uncertain. That is what faith is, and we all come through the same process. We all have this experience of being aware that God's out there. We all have this experience of believing and holding on to a promise. We all have this experience of being devastated. And for some of you, you're in it right now. And I want to invite you to consider that maybe what he's doing is trying to bring you to a place of mature faith where you realize that it's not just that God's out there. It's not just that God does some cool things and miracles happen every once in a while. And every once in a while when I feel the weight and devastation that he shows up and he helps me. But the resurrection is the root of everything. You see, for me, for you, if you're a follower of Jesus, if you're not yet a follower of Jesus, like I said, the process is very similar. You realize that he's out there. There's something in you that hopes. That maybe he's real, that maybe there's more to this, that I trusted all the wrong stories. I've kind of given up on those. I'm hopeful and ready to believe, I'm willing to believe that there's more to this. You've heard stories of how God's come through, and maybe you even have your own stories of how God has come through. And even if you haven't faced the devastation of the death of somebody close to you, you have faced devastation. See, it shows up in sin. in the things that block us off from God, that eventually stack up enough weight and enough guilt and enough shame that we feel overwhelmed and just taken out by it. And Jesus comes along. And God says, the death of my son, not the widow's son, my son, will set you free. And then he overcomes death, and the resurrection shows up in your devastation. The resurrection shows up in your desperation. The resurrection shows up in your everyday going on through your life days of moments of recognizing that God is around because he beat death. And if he can beat death, he can save you. That's how faith works. And it really comes down to, am I willing to believe? And for some of you, that's the step you need to take. Yes, I'm willing, Jesus. I don't understand it all. I'm not even sure exactly what everything means. But what I'm hearing is resonating with me. It is touching that part in my heart that has been pulling me here and towards you. I want to encounter you. I want to know you. I want to know what there is to all this God stuff. And as he pulls you closer to him, you've realized, I am willing. Your next step is very simple. Jesus, I believe in the resurrection. Would you save me and lead me? It's a straightforward prayer. And I hope that you will pray that prayer if you haven't before. And I have good news, as we talked about, in 3 weeks we're going to be baptizing. You'll have the opportunity to share what God has done in your life and share it with this whole community of faith, of people that are going to join with you and celebrate with you because of what God has done. But many of you are followers of Jesus. And you hear a story like this, or you see this expression and you see how it's played out in your own life, and you hopefully you ask the question, well, what does that mean for me? What do I do? Like I said, faith is a lifestyle. It's always going on. There's a question that you need to ask yourself. Because in your world, in your life, right now, God is making you aware of some things. He's showing you something about himself, about you, about the people you love and live with, about the community you live in. He's showing you something. He's also made promises that he's invited you to believe and to claim and to stand on. And he's with you in your devastation. Whether it's something that you have done or something that has been done to you. He's with you. And the question for a follower of Jesus becomes this: where is God asking me to be willing? Where is he asking me to be willing? And what is he asking me to be willing to believe? Because out of what you believe shows up how you live. We can say all the things we want to say, but what we do shows what we really believe. So where is God asking you to be willing to believe? It's summertime, start of summer. Pretty soon, if you haven't already, you're going to be getting in the pool. And there's this phenomenal symbolic thing that happens when we go swimming that is so much like faith. And I know I'm weird, so just hang with me for a second. Have you ever noticed when people go swimming, like they'll get their swimsuit on, they got their towel, kids get the goggles and everything, because I don't know, something to see at the bottom of the pool. I don't know what it is. But anyway, everybody gets ready and we do this kind of dance, right? They get ready and they're kind of like, oh, that's cold. Like, whoa, that's cold. I've been living in a desert. That's cold. I mean, it's not, but we think it is. And they're like, it's cold. And they kind of stand there and they're kind of waiting like somehow the water's magically going to warm up. Like if I give it 5 more minutes, it'll be better. Maybe I can swim from the side, or something. And you know how this goes, especially if other people are already swimming. Sooner or later, somebody says what? Jump in. Come on, just jump in. It'll shock you for a couple seconds and then you'll enjoy it. You'll be swimming. For a lot of us, when it comes to faith, we're standing on the edge of the pool. We're waiting. We're waiting for it to be easier. We're waiting for it to feel better. We're waiting because it might be a little uncomfortable. God's inviting you. The story of the widow is inviting you. Are you willing? Are you willing? In moments of desperation, are you willing to hope? In moments of awareness, are you willing to do whatever he gives you next? Are you willing? Are you willing to jump in? And so here's what I want to invite you to do. This series is going to go on, like I said, over the next couple of months. And I know not everybody's going to be in town every summer Sunday, and I'm going to be gone 1 or 2 times. I understand all of that. But if you're in town, are you willing to simply say, I want to encounter God? I want to encounter God every Sunday. Because the truth that's going to come out of all of this is that when we encounter God, we begin to count on God. When you meet God, it establishes your faith. When you hear from God, it locks in what you believe. When you have those moments of connection with God that are different and special, He takes you to a different place. But if you never encounter God, you lose all those things. And I'm not saying that church is the only place that can happen. My goodness, it happens all the time, everywhere. But this is the one place that it's designed to happen. You come here because you want to encounter God. And so I'm inviting you to take the very simple step of saying, you know what, I am willing. I am willing to come and join with my church family every Sunday for the next 2 months to encounter God. I want to worship Him. I want to hear from Him. I am willing to respond to Him. And if you can't be here in person, you can click in online. Are you willing to encounter God? Because if you are, He will take you to an incredible place through moments of awareness, through moments of desperation, and even through moments of devastation. And it will always come back to the resurrection. Can I pray for you? Father, God, what a simple, powerful idea. We want to encounter you. This woman was just gathering sticks and ready to die. She encountered you. Elijah was just living his life and you gave him a message and he gave it and it transformed everything about him because he encountered you. And Father, those are not just Bible stories of people far off and thousands of years ago. Those are moments that are happening right here in this room right now as we encounter you. As we sit with you. As we hear from you. Father, I confess in my own weakness. Sometimes I confess wanting to and being willing. Jesus, thank you for putting a willing spirit in me. It's not mine. You gave it to me. God, give us the courage to move even when our feelings aren't there. God, give us the wisdom to be willing. In moments when we see something we didn't expect. In moments when we're struggling. And in moments when we are truly and deeply overwhelmed. Give us a willingness to encounter you and to believe. We pray all these things in Jesus' name.